everybody, and welcome to the Tracy Williams Show. Every guest is good. They all say
There we
it.
go.
Oh, that's good. So, as usual, I'm here with my co-host or sidekick,
Sidekick.
Ricky the V. Vinson.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our guest today, man, we scored big this time. We got Chad Taylor, the athletic director and head football coach at Liberty High School.
Yeah, we all call him coach.
I'm not real sure how big that is.
It's
pretty
big.
big.
That's huge around here.
Okay, maybe we'll get about 3 more viewers. I'll call my sister and my mom and
That's what. See, that's
and
really
my
what
brother.
I'm trying to do.
There
I'm
you
trying to
go.
get a few more
so I
viewers
think I could help you out.
Yeah, we
Thank
like to have
you.
like 2 or 3 a week.
There you go. There you go.
We have big goals.
Yes, exactly. So, we kind of wanted to go back and find out a little bit about you first.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about Liberty football.
There you go.
Sound good?
That's fine.
Okay, so did you grow up here in Liberty?
I grew up here in Liberty. Yes, ma'am. I think my parents moved to Liberty back around 65. To my dad worked out at Western Company of North America is what it was called, I believe, when he first started working here in Liberty. And now it's called BJ Services, I believe. They built a house out off of Maple Street over there by the stadium. I think they were there for about less than a year, and then he got transferred down to the Valley in McAllen. I think they might have lasted about 8 months there. And my dad said either move me back to Liberty or he's done. So
Right.
they transferred him back to Liberty, and we've been here pretty much the rest of the history. I mean, my family, all of my brothers and sisters grew up in Liberty. We graduated from Liberty High School. I'm the youngest of 4. I graduated in 1990. Then my oldest sister, Cindy, graduated in 83. And then I got another sister, Jennifer, that graduated in 86. And then my brother was in 89, Scott. So we're all Liberty Panthers. My parents are both from the state of West Virginia, so they ended up down here because of work,
Right.
But yeah, we've been in this area, in this town, this community, I would say for well over 50 years. My parents. So
Wow. Okay, and so I know you were high school football coach and football quarterback, right?
yes, ma'am.
Quarterback. So before that, I mean, when did you start playing football?
No, I played football as early as I possibly could. I guess I was probably first, second, third grade. I remember playing for back then it was we were the Cowboys. I mean, we were black and gold, but we were the Cowboys. And I remember we actually played in the little Super Bowl you had back then. And back then it was us and Crosby and Dayton, and so it was a pretty good sized deal back then.
Yeah.
But I played pretty much my whole life, and then when I got to high school, I just ended up being quarterback by accident, to be quite honest with you. So I could always throw, but I wasn't always, swift of foot.
Right.
So I just ended up being the quarterback, I guess, when I was about a 10th grader. And then, when Coach Hacker got here, I ended up being the quarterback my senior year.
So Coach Hacker was your coach?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I had Mike Crow all the way up through my junior year. And then, of course, my senior year, Coach Crow left and went to Chapel Hill up around Tyler. And then we got Coach Hacker, the 89 football season. So that was his first season here.
Did you ever have a time where you just knew that you wanted to coach? I mean,
man, honestly, I really just, I kind of go back and you give a lot of thanks to Coach Hacker, Coach Peters. Chris Peters was one of my coaches growing up, and I just liked. They made me feel special. They didn't treat me any different than anybody else. I got some butt chewings and some whoopings just like anybody else, but I always felt like that's kind of what I want to do. I want to go see if I can make a difference in somebody else's life and in our community.
we were talking about that earlier today. That we love football.
Yeah.
Okay, we love football, but we also we can see the difference that our coaches here in Liberty make a difference in these guys. You're not just making football players.
Yeah.
You're making young men. You're
Well,
making men.
I've always said, and still say that my number one goal is to hope to help try to mold them to become better husbands and fathers than what their dad was. And I'm not knocking anybody's dad. I'm just saying, hey, I want you to be better than that. Learn from them, learn from their mistakes, and learn from their, some of the things that they do great, and try to be better for that. So that's really what it boils down to. Being able to be a part of these young men and women for that matter, since we pretty much all coach everybody, that we just want them to be, you just want them to grow up and be, a good, productive member of society, and hopefully, they could come back. And I always try to tell them, hey, it's good to go away. Liberty is a good place to come back to maybe, to maybe raise your family. But hey, go ahead and get out and see what it's all about, and then come back and make your own mark. So that's kind of what I did. I guess I had about a 22-year hiatus from Liberty. Coaching all around. I started my career up in Nocona, Texas, which is by Wichita Falls. I got married that summer to my wife now of probably 23 years now, Gail, and we moved to a little town called Italy, Texas, which is right outside of Waxahachie. My next year, I think I ended up in West, Texas, Texas, which is where my wife is pretty much from.
So what were you coaching? Your first coaching gig was you're coaching offense, defense?
Actually, it was a 2A school, so we were coaching offense and defense. There wasn't but 5 of us in the office, and so we all had an offensive position. We all had a defensive position. I coached wide receivers and defensive ends is what I coached back then. So, the next year at Italy, I coached both. I coached secondary and I coached wide receivers. And then when I got to West, I was the offensive coordinator. And then just from there on, you really just kind of get in where you fit in type deal. But yeah, the smaller you go, that's why I kind of really like the small school atmosphere, because one, you pretty much get to know everybody in the school building, from the janitors to the cafeteria ladies to all the secretaries, to me, all the people that kind of make our school run. So that's really where I see myself, is in these small school atmosphere. And Liberty's no different. We only got about 600 kids. So, when I was growing up here, I think we were a 4A school, had a little over 850 kids, I believe. So we've lost some numbers over, the last 30 years, but, I think the school still looks good to me.
It does.
It did. Now we got all these trophies and stuff behind.
Yeah, that was kind of a part of the bond issue to come in here. Am I correct saying you went to school in Liberty?
I did.
Okay, so you could kind of tell this is kind of where, the high school, the wall was right here. So this is just kind of an extension. Mm-hmm. We took it all the way outside, probably added about another 15 foot to the interior of the school here. And in the meantime, they built these trophy cases, and we built a little hallway to our little building, our outside building. Used to have to walk outside to get to it.
Actually, this is the new school. I never went.
My
wife was.
She was a counselor here one time. Am I right?
What?
Was your wife a counselor?
My wife, my sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law, okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but my wife was one of the first classes that went through here. This is the new school.
The new
Okay.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the
Well, I
new
went to
school.
middle school in the old school, so I went to middle school
Yeah,
over.
and that was my high school.
Yeah, that was your high school.
Yeah.
So,
So
but
where'd you go to college?
I went to Texas A&M University.
Oh, okay.
So you're an
Yeah.
ag.
I'm an Aggie.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just glad we pulled it out,
It's okay.
17-12. Big 17-12 win last night, but
Wins a win.
Wins
a win's a win. You're right about that. So
So
That's
your
good.
first job, when you graduated A&M, you knew right then you went from A&M to a coaching job.
I actually was coming down. I had moved up to the Waco area after I graduated December of '95, and I had actually come back down to College Station to interview with a guy by the name of Ross Rogers. He's kind of a legend in our profession, for a middle school position over in the College Station school district. And so while I was there visiting with him, I guess he liked me or whatever. He goes, man, he said, I just don't know if you need to spend any time at the middle school level. And I kind of took that as a compliment. But on my drive back towards the Waco area is when I got a call from the athletic director at Nocona High School. His name was Dave Joyner. And he told me that he had worked for Coach Rogers. And so Coach Rogers, once I left, they called him up and said, man, you need to kind of call this guy in and interview him. So 2 days later, I'm driving to Nocona, Texas. I had no idea where it was. Didn't even know about the boots or the gloves or anything like that. So I'm in Nocona, Texas 2 days later and interviewing for a position, and I got it. So that's where I started. That was about I believe that might have been the 96 football season.
So fast forward to Liberty. Now, right now, we're in the midst of, have we started district yet?
We just started Friday.
Friday.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So who are the teams to beat in our district?
Well, we're definitely not in an easy district by any
Well,
means.
no, that's-
I mean, when you have West Orange Stark, who every year they're going to be a preseason top 5 team. Nothing changed this year. They were number 3.
Wow.
Then you have Silsbee, who started the season off at number 6. Of course, they go off and play number 1 Pleasant Grove, and then they played number 4 Jasper, and they're not playing anybody soft by any stretch of the imagination. And at the same time, Silsbee has beaten West Orange the last 2 seasons for the regional championship. So those 2 teams are definitely the 2 to beat in our district.
What's crazy to me, okay, here I am. I graduated in 76.
Yes, sir.
Jasper was Jasper back then. Silsbee was Silsbee back then.
Mhm.
West Orange Stark, we never really dealt with them. But it seems like those areas are always strong.
Always. I mean,
Always.
when I was my senior year in high school, we were in the same district with Silsbee and Jasper, and and then so for the last few years, Silsbee had kind of been what we call 4A Division I, so they weren't really in our district. But over the last two realignments, they've been down there with us, and back when you were probably in school, West Orange was. Back then they were still kind of 2 high schools. You had Orange High School, and then you had Stark High School.
Right.
So I think they merged sometime right around the first of the '80s. So yeah, I mean but they just got so much talent it's not even funny. And so here we are over my 30 years since I've graduated. We've lost 200 and something kids, in our school. So there's just when you look at Liberty, there's not really much has changed since I graduated. Still got the snow cone stand. That's
Right.
So that's the highlight of our town, I guess nowadays. But and there's no real area for us to expand really to draw in.
Okay, but those teams have always been successful.
Absolutely.
But then you look at since you got here, you've been successful.
Well,
correct?
we started off a little rocky,
Right, you did.
but
Go ahead, tell the story.
once we were able to get to that first group of seniors. So when I got here, there was a group of 8th graders I thought was phenomenal, and I just always said if I can weather the storm until I can get those guys and have them for 4 years, I feel like we can get things turned around. And lo and behold, when that group of seniors, that was the year that we went 10-3. We won, our second round playoff game for the first time in 50 years, and then a couple years after that, we made it, at least 2 rounds for 3 years in a row. So, last year was a little down. This year we started off well. We're playing well, even though the outcome on Friday was not what I wanted. We still played well enough to win, and we've just got to get to the point where we quit making some mental mistakes. So
And I'm talking about when you got here, you put a program in place.
That's what we
It's
tried.
not- It's not just like you don't just care about the seniors. You care about all the way to the 7th, 8th,
absolutely.
and that's where you get your system going, and you grow from there. You
Well,
plant the seed.
And I can tell you, so this is probably my 8th year, and we've had at least 2 8th grade classes that have come through since I've been here that didn't win a game in 8th grade. But by the time they got to be seniors, they were 9-3. That first group that didn't win a game, they were 9-3, and the next group was 5-5. So, what I try to tell those guys on that level, and we have one junior high class that went undefeated, and that group is now juniors. So, but I try to tell them all the time, this is the last time you're going to play with your group of kids. When you come over here and you get to the high school, then we go try to get the best players we can out of 4 classes.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do, is get the best players that we can out of the 4 classes available to us. So, and I always try to tell them, hey, what you guys may lack in your grade level, there may be ahead of you and there may be behind you. So don't ever, don't get frustrated to the point where you don't want to play because things aren't going well over there. When you come over here, we're going to be able to start, putting pieces together and kind of gluing it all together the way we see fit. And I mean, so far the last, I'd say 4 to 5 years, it's worked out pretty well.
But also, just tell us about your coaching staff, because you were saying you brought some new talent on and
Some old guys,
familiar faces.
some familiar faces. So yeah, you're referring to the fact that I was able to get Coach Stewart, Jeff Stewart, who was, had been coaching in Liberty for almost 19, 20 years, I believe.
I didn't know
Well, he was there. He wasn't the head coach that long, but he was the head coach probably a good 10 years. Worked for Coach Hacker.
Right.
And then he left and went across the river for about 12. And so they had a coaching change this past year. And I mean, and when you have a coaching change, I mean, nobody's safe at that point. I've been in his shoes many a times. And so knowing that he was available, I called him up and see if he'll come talk to me. Because I did defense last year, but I just, once I had a coach with me last year, Coach Woods, who was my offensive coordinator that passed away back in April. I just knew I wanted to go back and do offense. I wanted to find somebody else to come in, run the defense, do what you do. I'm not bothering you.
Right.
Do what you do. And so Coach Stewart came back, and I mean, it's been a great addition. I remember Mr. Buchanan asked me one time, that's kind of uncommon for me to probably go back and offer an ex-head coach a job. But at the end of the day, I don't have an ego. I don't really, I don't worry about that kind of stuff. And if he's the best choice I got for a defensive coordinator, I'm making that choice, and we're going to move on. So he's done a tremendous job. He's got Harold Haymans was a coach here once upon a time. When I was going to Lamar University for a semester, that first semester, I was coming back and helping out with the junior high. Well, Coach Stewart and Coach Heyman were junior high coaches at the time. That's back when the junior high was over at your old high school, over there by the stadium. So those guys knew each other, and so they've kind of rekindled their friendship. And then I got a guy named Landon Hessler who coaches the secondary. Martin Massey coaches outside linebackers, and so they make up our defensive staff. And our defense has been really, in my opinion, lights out. The first 4 games. Offensively speaking, I kind of take care of the offense. Nolan Lanham, he's kind of my offensive coordinator, offensive line coach. Joe Slack coaches the running backs. And then Rob Kirkland helps me out with the tight ends and, basically anything else like that. And then I got Liam Farrington. He kind of helps out with some wide receivers whenever we do put one out there. So anyway, I mean, we've all, we've had a pretty good year up to this point. We kind of let one get it by. Last Friday had plenty of opportunities. I mean, I could sit here and argue about some calls that were made and weren't made, but at the end of the day, too, we did have some turnovers, in my opinion, that led to some points. And as upset as I'll be for a long time about the outcome of it, I mean, you got to just take a long look in the mirror and see. Don't sit there and keep pointing the finger like I want to do sometimes. Just
we all want to do that.
Yeah. It's easy. It's easy because
especially when you're competitive.
Well, and I mean, and some of the stuff was just, in my opinion, kind of blatant. And but honestly, I just never had any luck when I'm going in that direction. When I'm going east and I'm playing those schools in that Beaumont area, and we're having to use the Beaumont chapter officials. I mean, they are definitely biased towards those Golden Triangle schools. There's no doubt about it, in my opinion. And I mean, it was not more evident than it was Friday night, in my opinion. But I'm not going to talk about that.
Well, sometimes you just have to breathe in, breathe out, and move on.
I'm moving on.
And you need to look also at the big goal.
Well,
I mean, because I think we'll make the playoffs.
I hope you're right.
And then when you make the playoffs, that's when it starts.
Yes, I mean, so that's why. I mean, and to me, it was last week is we were 3-0 going into it, and I told the guys, I said, all right, so all of our dress rehearsals, we're done. We're over. Now it matters. So our goal last week was to go one. We wanted to be 1-0. That's what we want to be. We want to be 1-0 that week, and we came up short. And this week we want to be 1-0. And I mean, we got a really tough team coming in on Friday night. It'll be the first time anybody in Liberty, will get to see a home game because we've been on the road for the first 4 games, and so we're kind of excited about that. I'm hoping that that's kind of an extra, added motivation for our guys to play well. And I think I know this, when the game was over on Friday, we hurt. And there was a lot of hurt in that group of guys. And so that kind of makes me feel a lot better because it should hurt. And it should hurt.
You're not hurt.
And if you're not hurt and it doesn't bother you, then you don't need to be out here much longer. So they were hurt. And so a lot of them are, they can't wait to get here tomorrow. We'll watch film starting tomorrow at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I told them, I said, we're going to find out who wants to be here because, we've got to go to work. And we're having a really good football team come in on Friday that's not going to.
Who are we playing?
We're playing the Silsbee Tigers.
Okay.
So
I got a dumb question.
and it's homecoming. So most people don't schedule somebody like Silsbee.
On the
for
homecoming.
But think about my choices. I had
Yeah.
Silsbee Tigers. I had the West Orange Start Mustangs, or the last game of the season, which is, designated senior night. Who wants to go have homecoming the last game of the season?
So
Right.
COVID, how's that going to affect the fan turnout?
Well, we are going to be at 50% capacity, which for our home side.
So how do I get tickets? I guess that's my question.
Wait a
Okay.
minute, our home side is packed anyway. When I go, I'm like this, trying to watch a game.
Well,
We need to expand.
that's a good sign.
I know, but we need to expand.
Yeah, hey, y'all heard
Okay.
it from her first.
Okay,
You heard it.
everybody, I'm not talking giant multi-million-dollar deal. Let's just add some seats,
Add
please.
some seats.
Okay?
I tell you what we're going to do this coming week, and like I said, this will be the first time we've experienced it because this is our first home game. I'm gonna back up. So Monday and Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, Monday and Tuesday, if you have a participant in the game, whether it be football, cheer, band, drill
First
team,
choice.
those guys are going to get first dibs,
I
Mhm.
should.
and
That
they're
makes
going to get. I think they're going to get 4 tickets apiece.
Okay.
When Wednesday rolls around, Wednesday and Thursday, they'll open it up to the public, and that could be anybody. So I think that's how it's going to go down. We can almost house probably about 1,200 on our side in terms of the 50%. We're going to actually take the band and put the band down on the track area.
Okay.
Oh, that's good.
And try so that we can open up that one, their end. But it would almost be good, like you said, if we could eventually down the road, and it may
need
be
more
after
seats.
I'm gone, but if they put some bleachers in the end zone down there on
Yeah.
that south side to where, the bands can stay in that section, and then that open up those extra
Mhm.
200 to 300 seats
I've
that
had
you
to
would.
sit on the other side before.
That's not a bad seat sometimes.
It's actually pretty nice.
Uh,
Because I'm not like this. I don't like this.
Yeah, I know. I don't like.
Well, I tell you, when Coach Pickens was still with me, I just could always go out to the game, and I know him and Coach Peters are going to sit up in the very far corner
Mhm.
on the visitor side.
Yep.
And so, I just got accustomed to walking out, looking up there to make sure they was there, because they were always going to be the first two to probably,
Say something.
Mhm.
critiqued. It didn't matter whether it was good or bad. Coach Pick was going to find something. He was always up here at 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday anyway, ready to just hammer you whether or not you won 50-0 or what the outcome was. He was going to pick on you about something. So, that right there has kind of made this year, a little. I'm just glad he wasn't here to see all the mess we got to go through, and
So are they going to be wearing masks?
you got to wear a mask. You got to have a mask on to enter the facility. Now, when you get in, you can sit in your little pod area,
Yeah.
5 or 6, or how many
Okay.
family members you may have, or whatever. And and you could, I guess if you trust them, you can take your mask off. I have no idea. I haven't ever
You're
turned.
not the mask police.
No. So.
You're just there to play football.
I'm looking that way, so I don't really necessarily
Yeah.
know exactly what. I do kind of peek around just to make. Come on, please, just be spread out. I don't want to be that
Right.
school
Gets in
that
trouble.
gets
Yeah.
put on the front page of a newspaper because we're not following all the protocols.
Yeah.
But I can say this, that I feel like in the 4 games we played, I feel like our people have done a tremendous job of doing all the things that they need to do to help ensure that we get to continue
Right.
to play. So I just ask that we continue to do that so these seniors can have,
Enjoy their season.
enjoy their senior year, and so far they are. So
So we got volleyball going on right now too?
we got volleyball's
Yeah,
going
tell us
on right
about some
now.
of these other sports.
Well, volleyball's going on. They're kind of right in the middle. I guess we're 2-2
Mhm.
right now. Now we got 2 really good teams, volleyball teams in our
Mm-hmm.
district, if I'm not mistaken, the Huffman Falcon, Lady Falcons are #1 in the state.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
And then Splendora, I think they're a top 15 team in the state. So 2 really good teams. And then I think right now we have wins over Livingston. We have wins over Shepherd. So I really feel like our young ladies are doing a tremendous job. Coach Slack does a good job, year in and year out with the talent that she's given. And I think they're going to find a way in the playoffs as well. And hopefully, we can get in there and do something. We got cross country. We just hosted our annual Tony Munson Invitational. Normally we have about, over 1,000 runners.
Yeah.
1,000 to 1,200. Well, of course, with all the protocols we got to follow, we were only able to have, I think we could invite 8 schools in our 6A and 5A division, boys and girls. And then we could have 8 schools in our 4A and below. So the numbers were smaller. And then, of course, we gave plenty of time to get, once those races were over, give those people time to get off the premises.
Right.
So that the rest of them could come in. And so it ran off pretty smooth on Saturday. And I don't have the results on my computer. So, but at the same time, we were up here working. And then we also hosted a JV game on Saturday. We have this brilliant idea. And this is a brilliant idea. And I'm saying that in the most sarcastic way possible.
Right.
A JV game on a Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock just really wasn't as fun as it probably first sounded. But we got because we had to cut our work day short and get those kids suited out, and then we played Hardin Jefferson here yesterday at 1 o'clock. And the reason that we had to do that, I'm sure, because there's been a lot of people I'm sure that have been upset about it, but it was brought up not by me but by Coach Thompson at West Orange that. If we moved the JV game to a Saturday, then we would have our entire roster at our disposal on a Friday if something were to happen during the week with COVID.
Okay, I got you.
So if you got a Thursday evening and all of a sudden you got 3 or 4 guys that might have tested positive or somebody tested positive and you started doing all your contact tracing and you lost some guys, I still would have my entire athletic period guys available for that game. But if I played a JV game on a Thursday night, and then something were to happen, between Thursday night and the kickoff of Friday night's game, you lost those 40 guys. Right. They can't play back-to-back days. So that's the theory behind it all. But I'm just going. I've always been under the impression that I'm just going to play the cards I'm dealt.
Right.
If something were to happen, knock on wood that it hopefully it doesn't. I'm playing the cards I'm dealt. I'd rather just play my JV game on Thursday, work on Saturday, and let those kids have get their 2 days off before they got to do it all over again.
Right. Have any of the teams had COVID issues? I mean, like any of our competitors?
Yeah, I mean the only one that has been brought to my attention was Dieball. So Dieball had an issue the week prior to us playing them.
Okay.
They didn't play the week before we played them. So they did have a young man, I think, that had all the signs and symptoms on that Monday, and they lost probably, I'd say, 20 to 30 guys, that week.
Wow.
And so they canceled their game against Woodville, I believe, is who they were scheduled to play. But then, the following week against us, they started getting them all back, and I think they still had a handful of guys that didn't participate, but all we could do, like before we get on the bus, they come right by my office. We temperature check. I chart it on the computer. I make sure they have their mask up, and we get on the bus and we go. And that's really about all we could do at that time.
So when they get on the bus, I guess they take their mask off, surely.
No, they got to have the mask on when they're on the bus. Now, if they go take a nap, that's fine. Take it off.
No,
It's crazy,
Yeah.
but I mean, we got them sitting there. We assign them to their own seat.
Right.
We try to say, hey, look, we need
you're doing everything right.
Well, I mean, we're doing everything that we possibly can. I mean, I say, look, I just need you facing the front.
Right.
I don't need you sitting in your seat sideways to where you can talk to. But at the same time, I may be talking to the guy next to me, but the seat's up a little bit. So.
Well, what do the classrooms look like right now? So they're at a smaller capacity too, right? Or are
Yeah,
they?
I mean, for the most part, they are. I couldn't tell you. I mean, I
Yeah.
really do not know all the logistics of how many kids started off remote learning
Yeah.
compared to, in face-to-face learning. I do know that it didn't take long for some of those guys to start changing their mind about, the remote
at-home
learning.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think for the most part, they're not maybe at full capacity, but I mean, I think we're trying to do as much as we can on a normal
You can only do
scale.
what you can do.
They got to have their mask on while they're in the classroom and while they're walking the halls and I got to give kudos to our kids because, I mean, they're doing it. I know it's uncomfortable at times. I don't like walking in the building. I mean, I don't probably come in the building near as much as I used to because one, I don't want to put the mask on all the time. But I'll come in and you got to walk down to the office to get your mail and you got to have the mask on. So.
Right.
I've lived a long time and never had to go through this. So
One
Yeah.
real quick question, because you were talking about Coach Pickens. Liberty's had a lot of great coaches and mentors and teachers that came through here. Could you just talk about some of the ones from Liberty, just the Liberty people that have really meant?
Influenced you.
Oh, I tell you, I mean, I'm going to go back to my senior year was Coach Hacker's first year in Liberty. It was Coach Pickens' first year in Liberty.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
My senior year, that's when Coach Pickens came in with Coach Hacker. Of course, Coach Peters is a guy that's real high up on my list as well. He was here with Mike Crow. So Coach Peters has been here a long time. But I definitely think, Coach Hacker, he came in, he became like a little father figure, I mean, he did a good job of teaching me right from wrong and knowing that I didn't make all the right decisions all the time. So, but he didn't treat me any different than anybody. I mean, like I said earlier, I got plenty of whippings in high school, and I wasn't mad about none of them. I mean, I know I needed it probably, and my mom and dad were the first ones to say, "Whoop his tail." Don't bring it home to me. You go ahead and take care of business. Pickens was the same way. Pickens was always that way. Pickens was a guy who, he came across so stern and so just loud and boisterous and everything, but really and truthfully, he was a big teddy bear.
He was a big old man.
He's a big guy, and with his physique. But I'm telling you, had a heart of gold. I mean, that guy. My first year he coached for me. I got him to come coach with me, and I mean, and so for the last few years, I mean, he just was. I mean, almost every morning he would show up, at the gate and come in there and sit down while I'm doing cafeteria duty and just talk and just kind of BS with the kids. I mean, it was just something he was good at, and our kids loved him. And I mean, and so whenever he passed last year, I mean, it really affected a lot of those guys that never really got coached by him, but he was up here so much they just, they called him Coach Pick. That's who he was. And so, and then again, Coach Peters, I mean, I could tell you all kind of stories. He ended up being my next door neighbor, lives next door to my mom. And so, his son was in my wedding. Brett was in my wedding. So, and Coach Peters and Miss Peters, they came up to my wedding, and so they've always been really close to me and my family. So, yeah, I mean, I think those guys, a lot. I mean, Coach Blaylock, who's still around, was a junior high coach and one of the high school coaches. I mean, I know I'm going to forget somebody, but I mean, there was a lot of really good coaches, positive influence people. I mean, I would be remiss if I did not say Coach Gunner. I had Coach Gunner as well. Pete Gunner, yeah. And Coach was my offensive coordinator. And when I first got here, he'd come up and we just talk. I just like talking to him because I know those guys have forgotten more than I'll ever know. And I mean, and then I see Mr. Gunner in the hallways, Mr. Randy, constantly talking about, asking him how his dad's doing because he's up there, he was up there kind of about the same age as my dad was. And I lost my dad back in March.
I'm
so sorry.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I mean, it was, I'm just glad he didn't have to see what we're going through right now. He'd have drove him crazy. So,
Right.
I was telling Tracy, I almost called her Angie. About your mom and dad, I mean, you've had great coaches, you've had great support, but then your parents are like top notch.
Oh man, I appreciate that, and I would have to agree with
Go
you.
top notch.
My dad, for anybody that knows him, I mean, he was always real quiet. He wasn't.
Quiet.
He wasn't never. He never was a talker, and so I really feel really fortunate to have had him as my dad. I mean, I just learned really how to treat people. I mean, he didn't treat anybody bad. He didn't have a bad word to say about anybody, and I still to this day have never had anybody say a bad thing about him. All he did was work 45 years at Western Company. He was a volunteer fireman. He was a captain for the fire department for several years. Gave to this community as I would expect him. And my mom, I mean, she's the same way. I mean, so I'm just fortunate that they chose Liberty, Texas, to be a place that they.
Well, we are fortunate.
Well, I appreciate that.
That they chose Liberty.
Well, I mean,
your mother is involved in North Main.
Yeah.
Your dad, I got to know him a little bit just by doing the house. And getting to talk to him, and we're blessed.
Well, I appreciate that because, I mean, like I said, this is where we grew up. This is where we're going to always call home, regardless of what anything that ever happens. My oldest sister still lives here. My other sister, Jennifer, she married Art Marcus, who's a Liberty guy.
Right.
So they and then my brother, Scott, he married Charlotte Gillard, who's a Liberty girl. So, I mean, we're just Liberty.
What a blessing for you to be able to come back.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that just, how times does that happen?
well, I mean,
That's awesome.
and as you grow up, they say, yeah, you don't want to go back to your hometown. They don't look at you the same. They call you little chatty boy or whatever they used to call you. And I mean, and I never looked at it that way. I always knew that I wanted to come back here at some point in time and try to make a difference. I always said that I wanted to go back and maybe do something with the football team that had never been done. I had no idea that it was 50-something years since they had won a second-round playoff game. I knew that in my time and all the time that I knew Liberty Panther football, I couldn't really remember us winning maybe one or two playoff games in general. So, yeah, I feel real fortunate that we've made the playoffs. I guess 5 out of 7 years, and we've won probably 4 or 5 playoff games in that span. And I mean, and so it just really gets me going. I mean, I don't know if y'all remember, but that year that we went to College Station and played Lorena, that citywide pep rally that we had at the stadium,
Yes.
That had every student in the school district, which is close to 2,000. I mean, to me, that was unbelievable. That was unbelievable. And then to be able to go off and win, that game, because it was a really good football team, and I was really nervous and sick to my stomach all week long, knowing that we're having to play those guys. And so, really, I mean, I don't really, when my coaching career comes to an end, I mean that'll be one of my highlights, just that pep rally and to see how people. Because I tell you this, I had a first grade teacher. Her name was Miss Daniels. So I'm out there on the field during this pep rally, and this young lady comes up to me. She said, "Coach Taylor." I said, "Yes, ma'am." She goes, "You don't remember who I am, do you?" I said, "I'm sorry, baby. Can you please help me out?" She goes, "I'm Miss Daniels, your first grade teacher."
Wow.
So that was awesome to me.
Yes.
To know that my first grade teacher came to this pep rally. And she probably didn't come because of me, but she made it a point to come find me. And so, yeah, it was awesome. Give Miss Daniels a hug and tell her thank you. Because, I mean, I was probably just like a lot of kids in the first grade. I probably wasn't really all that good. So.
What about kids that have been through the program? Any of them gone on to college?
Well, I mean, they start off in college. To play football at the next level is hard.
Yeah, I'm sure
it's hard. And if it's not something that you really deep down truly want to do for the next 4 to 5 years after high school, and
be willing to do the schoolwork too.
Oh, that's the hardest part.
And they make you. What I can't believe on these college athletes is how much practice they have to do, how much away from the school you've got to do just to be on the football team, and then you got to do all the,
Well, to me in general, to be a student athlete, even at high school,
yeah.
it takes a special
It's
person.
hard.
So I mean, there's a reason why a lot of people don't participate in
Yeah.
athletics when they get to high school, because when you got to go spend 8 hours of your week out here practicing, and then not to mention you got a chemistry test that week
Right,
or an
exactly.
algebra. I mean, that's tough, and I mean, and so it does take, in my opinion, a special breed to do that. But it's magnified 2 to 3
Yeah,
times over if
exactly.
you go try to do that at the high school level. For me, or at the college level, John Ryder was a young man that went on, but he had some knee issues when he played here, and then he went up there and he was doing really well. It hurt his knee again. I mean, and to have to rehab that many times, it just takes its toll on you. So, I think now he's just, relegated to just getting a college degree, which I'm perfectly fine
Great,
with that.
that's great.
That's what I want you to do. And, I think when you just look at athletes that have left here, I mean, I think the one that comes to my mind, not necessarily a football player for me, but would be Caitlyn Slack,
Oh, yeah.
who was probably, arguably, one of the best female athletes to ever walk through these halls. Got a full scholarship to the University of Texas. Started at shortstop for the University
That's
of Texas.
amazing.
And now, she had an opportunity to come back just like the rest of those girls did last year after all the COVID, and they were like ranked number 2 or 3 in the country. But Caitlyn knew that it was time to move on, and so now she is a grad assistant at the University of Kansas.
I did not know
So
that.
she's still in the Big 12.
Wow.
The coach of Kansas is a young lady named Jennifer McFalls. I knew Jennifer because she played at A&M whenever I was going to school there. So Jennifer was an assistant coach at the University of Texas. Recruited Caitlyn, was her infield coach. She got the head coaching job at the University of Kansas, and had always told Caitlyn, once you're done at the University of Texas, I want you to come coach with me.
Wow.
So I'm hoping that kind of pans out for Caitlyn, and maybe Caitlyn will come down here and recruit my 2 girls in a few
There
years.
you go. There you go.
Because I'll be a Jayhawk if I have to be. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't matter to me. Yeah. So
I did not know she was.
yeah, she's a grad assistant at the University of Kansas. That's pretty special.
That's very
She graduated from the University of Texas in May, and she's getting
That's
her
a great
master's degree.
school.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I
I
know.
went to Texas. He
Well,
was
I went to A&M, but you know what? When
But
she
it's
was
great.
when
It
she
is
was on
great.
TV, we didn't have no problem
didn't
watching
care,
her.
did you?
So I
It's
mean, it didn't
wonderful.
matter, and we pulled for her every time we watched her. So yeah, I know we're excited for her and her new opportunity, and and now her brother JJ is plays at Southwestern, which is in Georgetown. He was a 2-sport
Oh,
guy
good.
last year as a true freshman.
Yeah.
He was voted the team's most valuable player.
Yeah,
I mean, as a freshman, because he started the season off as a receiver, and a couple quarterbacks got hurt. They knew he played quarterback in high school. He went over there and started 2 or 3 games. I think they won 2 out of those 3. And then when the starter came back, then they moved him over there and he started the last 3 games at safety. So
Just a pure athlete.
yeah, he was an athlete.
Yeah.
He was an athlete. If JJ was 6'3", he'd have gone anywhere he wanted to go. But he's also a baseball guy. So he plays baseball at Southwestern as well as a pitcher. And, he's not going to be able to play football this year because they're playing that in the spring. And so it's going to interfere with baseball, but he's going to play baseball and then pick up football in the fall, hopefully. So
That's great.
those are just 2 that I can think of right off the
that's
bat.
great.
And I apologize if I'm not talking about all of them. So
No, you've done. Yeah.
Okay, so my kids were both in the band, and I remember you had a really good kicker
Yep.
that saved the game all the time.
So you're referring to Jesus Landaverde.
Yes.
And, I mean, you're right, because I can name 3 games right off the bat where he kicked a field goal with no time on the clock, and one of them was a playoff win over Shepherd. So yeah, he was special. And then last year I had his I guess Eric Espinosa was his uncle, and so he was a good kicker. I mean, he could kick it right-footed, left-footed. I mean, sometimes he didn't know what foot he was going to kick with when he got up there on kickoffs.
Really?
So it was kind of crazy. But anyway, he was good. But I tell you, I got a young man right now that I think is going to be really special. He's a freshman. Brian Montez is his name. He's He's kicked 3 last-second field goals. We were able to drive down right before half and kick a field goal in all 3 of our first 3 games with no time on the clock. So he's 3 for 3 on field goals. He's probably, I guess right now he's probably 11 for 11 on extra points. I mean, he's going to be special, and I got him for 4 years.
Wow.
So he's yeah, just remember that name, Brian Montez. He's going to be somebody that I think, I told him the other day, I said, Brian, here's the deal. After your sophomore year, you want to start going to some kicking camps because I guarantee you field goal kicking, I mean, that's a premium. Guys are looking for good field goal kickers all the time. So, I mean, don't not use that as an avenue to get out of Liberty, Texas if it's there. So, yeah, he's going to be really special. Really fortunate to have him. We knew we was going to get him last year as an eighth grader. He was a good kicker.
And he's on the soccer team too?
He's on the soccer team. All 3 of those.
How's your soccer team?
Our soccer team has been pretty consistent, consistently good over the last, I'd say I've been here, this is my 8th year, and I think we've made the playoffs all 8, we're 7 out of the year since we hadn't had this year, and we were going to make it last year too before all the Corona stuff happened. So Coach Roberts, Joe Roberts does a really good job with those guys, and I mean, he's of course he's a play-by-play guy for kshine.com, and so he's a big football guy as well. So he's pushing those guys. He wants those guys to come be a part and help us out in any way we can. So it'll be about 4 years before he has to worry about helping me out again. I got the one I like.
So, like this young man, did he say that Coach Roberts, the soccer guy?
Soccer coach.
Yeah. Did he say this guy could probably be a good field goal kicker? Or
No,
he just have tried.
No, Brian played football last year as an 8th grader.
Okay.
And so, and just talking to Brian last year, I would say, hey, hey, next year we're losing our kicker, so we got an open spot. If you want it, come get it. That type of deal, and I mean, and so he's been out there from day one, and man, he's been tremendous. I can't rant and rave about him enough because he's just a freshman. I already got ice water in his veins, and
that's the thing with the kicker,
I mean, now he's kind of. He's kind of starting to, feel good about it, and I mean that's the key.
Right.
If he gets out there, if he gets out there knowing that hey, right now I'm pretty much money from, he made a 36-yarder I guess last week, so I mean he's pretty, but I've seen him make 45 to 48-yard field goals in practice.
My gosh.
So, we feel good about where we're at on the kicking. I mean, I just feel like if you were at the game the other day, I mean. They botched one of their extra points, and we were real close from picking it up, going in there, scooping and scoring, which would have been a 2-point conversion for us, and we would have been down by 3 points. And then all I would have had to do was kick a field goal as time expired, and we could have, but ifs and nuts, huh? I mean, it didn't happen that way, but I wouldn't have had any problem putting that young man out there to kick. So
that's wonderful. That's good. Well, we really appreciate you taking a Sunday off, and he had a baseball game today. This guy's working all the time.
Well, I tell you, I give so much to these kids on this campus during the week that on Saturday and Sunday, I got 4 kids of my own, and I tell all of my coaches, don't miss your kids doing anything.
Right. We've got 2 of yours right here.
Yeah, so I'm just glad they keep walking back and forth. I'm thinking, please don't hit the camera. Please don't unplug it. So, but anyway, we had some baseball games out of Ford Park today. So.
All right. Well, great. Well,
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
This is great, and I want to have you back, especially when we're in the playoffs.
Absolutely.
Because we're going to make the playoffs.
Absolutely.
And then we'll talk to you then and see how things are going.
I appreciate you having me. Oh, yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.